Good day, everybody, and welcome to Talks on Tuesday, where we meet every week on Tuesday at 11 o'clock Pacific time to discuss a variety of metaphysical ideas and conundrums and quandaries and suppositions. If you're watching us on YouTube, please remember to like and share. If you'd like to join us on our Zoom every week, send us an email at talksontuesday333@gmail.com and we will send you the link. Yes, did I say that wrong?
It's Talks on Tuesdays with an S at the end of Tuesdays.
Talks on Tuesdays 333@gmail.com. Okay, thank you, Barbara. Well, we're here today and it's my turn. And I've been thinking a lot about life paths, partly because I'm in the middle of a big change in my life. I'm packing up my apartment, putting everything in storage, and heading to Europe for I'm not sure how long. I didn't buy a return ticket. So we'll see what happens when I get there. But I figured, gosh, if I'm going to have an adventure, I'd better do it when I'm 72 instead of 73, or around about that time. So I've been thinking about paths and life paths and what that means. We hear a lot of people in metaphysics talk about the path we're on, the path we choose, the path that we've planned to follow when we come into this life. And I would just sort of like to hear what you think about that. Is it linear? Is it a timeline? Is it recurring themes and motifs and challenges that make up our life path? You tell me.
Is it linear or is it not? I like that.
Well, we think of a path as it's by nature linear, but is it really, or is it a staircase, or is it a roller coaster? Sometimes it is.
I think I don't want to change the subject but I kind of think a lot lately about every option is happening and we just pop into the one we choose to go towards. So the next thing on the path is where you vibrationally align the most. But all other options are still happening. It's just the one you perceive is the one you vibrate into. But
Yeah, there's so much we don't perceive that's actually there.
Mm.
Yeah. Renee,
I
you're
like that thought, Chelsea.
yeah, okay.
Okay.
You're still breaking up. I don't know what the problem is. We had one week where you were just fine.
Oh, well.
Maybe put it in the chat and then I'll read it. It's a lot of typing, I know. Yeah, Barb, were you going to say something?
Oh, no, I was just going to welcome the people who popped in after you were
Right,
talking.
Yolanda, yes, Louis Therese.
Here comes Cecilia.
I was gonna let me just say, it's funny because I'm looking at everybody and we're all kind of pondering. It's like, yeah, life path. And I'm to be honest, life path is not something that I've ever spent much time on. And I mean, maybe a lot of people don't. It's not something that's really encouraged. We don't, there's not a lot of discourse about life path unless you really pursue that discourse. And then, boy, is there a lot of discourse about life path.
Yes.
And so the thing that's, I guess, drives my life is I see something that sparkles and I just go, wow, bang. And it might be really painful. but it sparkled because my soul said, yeah, let's have that experience.
Yeah.
And for me, it's been sort of that simple, but God, maybe it's time to expand my understanding of life path and be more aware of that.
Yeah, something sparkly could be a diamond or it could be broken glass. All kinds of possibilities. Uh, okay, Gino.
You're still muted, Gina.
I have been doing it so much lately, like I've never used a computer. Anyway, Chelsea's comment was on the market was about the subject and the vibration thing. And for me, that's part of it. Um, for me, there's, other things that are involved, such as philosophy, practicality, spirituality, appropriateness, safety, um, courage. There's all these elements that you can go into. I'm reviewing right now what will be my next move, which I feel will be possibly temporary towards a bigger move. I'm not sure. I'm actually going to have some surgery on Friday.
Hmm.
And once I've recovered from that, it'll probably take maybe a couple of weeks. I really am looking at what are the next things I'm going to do right after that. But I have to do something. My life says that. But part of that for me at 74 is that, I don't feel necessarily that I'll be here for another 30 years. All of us that are in our 70s, we can say it could be tomorrow, it could be 5 years, 1 year, 10 years, 14, whatever. I just don't know. And I look at my mom, she's 94. So I don't know. But there's a lot involved in it, and I do think about each new move. And whenever I do a so-called revolutionary move for me, it was absolutely the right thing.
Mhm.
Everything fell in place. It was like I was supposed to do that. And it was almost like I didn't have to do anything to make everything work. It just done. So, like with you, Mary, with what you're doing, perhaps that will happen with you. But it's a wonderful feeling. And it's a wonderful feeling knowing that, yeah, I was supposed to do something and I did the right thing.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah. Or the thing you do becomes right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, Julie.
Hi, everybody. Um, what I wanted to comment on was what Durin had said, because I kept thinking when I was thinking about it earlier, and I thought, I just never thought about it. And I went with whims or, I was a real thrill seeker. I'll say that. And adventurous. And I never thought a lot about what I was doing until, of course, much later when I had look back on some of the things that you know my path took me. I kind of cringe a little bit. Um, but I guess I look at that as those were all experiences, learning experiences for me that were taking me on the path. Um, uh, I think that I never. I don't know. I never thought about, some people have it all worked out. I'm gonna, graduate high school. I'm gonna go to college. I want to be an engineer. And I was like, with people like that, I go, how do they know all that? Because all I wanted to do was get out of high school. And that was my goal, and and then from there I did some traveling and I worked and and it just one thing came after the other. Now at my age at 74, like Gino, I could see the paths that I took, and sometimes I'll say, gee, if I had done this, then, I wonder. But I took a big change too 2 years ago by moving to Arizona, and that was like a turn, in my everything was like nice in LA, and I was pretty happy, but the way things happened, I go with the flow basically. I kind of am like that. Yeah, not as much as I used to, because like I said, I was a thrill seeker, but uh, that's kind of how I feel about what my path is. I think right now my path is more centered on a little bit of inquiry about who I am, and more spiritual, since I've gotten involved in reconnective healing. That's really helped me to do that. And anyway, so I think that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you're a thrill seeker. Because all of my
I
thrill,
was, I was,
well,
was.
mine was all about the books I was reading, and that's where I got my thrills. It was never in my life. So maybe now I will. I'm going to read what Renee wrote in the chat. My life path could be compared to the long and winding road. I thought of that song too, Renee. It is definitely nonlinear, filled with twists and turns I never planned. Many surprises that were unexpected turned a corner that led me ultimately in a new direction. Yeah, I think we can all relate to that.
Yeah.
So all of a damn sudden, you're somewhere else. Barb, you had your hand up?
I was actually going to read Renee's post, but
Oh, okay.
yeah. And then she actually added something. I recorded myself at my piano before signing on to Zoom, totally audible. I found it frustrating and confusing why the audible is not connected when she talks with us. And yeah, I agree, Renee. I don't know why it's not working. You come through kind of really garbled, and yeah, I don't know why.
Disturbing.
But um yeah, I guess talking about life path, it's interesting because I have looked at my life path. I mean, I've considered it numerous times, um, and I've always kind of um, been involved with like healing and fixing and helping,
Mhm.
and I unintentionally got into that position. Um, but I ended up, first being a medical assistant, and then I went back to become a nurse, and then I became an acupuncturist, and did all this energy work and all and qigong, reiki, et cetera, and then got involved with reconnective healing. And recently I've decided, and well, looking back over my life numerous times while I was growing up, I realized that a lot of it was because of my family of origin, and they were so dysfunctional, and I was the middle child, and had to be kind of like the fixer of keeping things together and keeping people calm, and kind of like smoothing over things. And so I think I took that role on pretty young. And more recently I've decided just to kind of step away from that whole thing and become an end of life doula. And it's in some ways it's kind of similar, but it's not. It's like non-medical, and I'm not fixing anybody, and I'm still sharing information. Um, but it's a different focus, and so it's like I've made this conscious decision to just alter a little bit, maybe. But when I look back over my life, it's been almost a little bit like Julie. I hitchhiked across the country when I was
Yeah.
19 and jumped on a train with a friend from Southern Oregon up to Eugene, and I've done all these kind of crazy things, and yet they all kind of contributed to where I am today. And so I am so grateful right now and happy with where I am. And it's funny because I was talking to some people at a death cafe 2 months ago, and this one young woman was talking about how unhappy she was. And I realized a little bit later that she could have been me when I was younger, but now my life is so satisfying and just beautiful that I forget that it used to be chaos and drama and all this unhappiness and stuff. So I'm just grateful for being at that place. So I see Gino's got his hand up again.
Yeah, Gino.
Look at me. I remembered to click on the audio thing. Um, well, first, Barbara and Julie, I'm so glad that you did what you did in your youth, just taking those risks and just being wild, whatever you were.
Was
And
wild.
it just, contributed to your now and all that good stuff. And for me, I was thinking that I didn't really have anything deliberate that I did to be different. I just was born that way out of the womb and nothing like anybody else in my family. So different. Some people would call it black sheep, which I don't like that term. But wherever I was all through this process, I felt different, whether it be a community of people or one-on-one, or let's say maybe the dating scene, or at a club, or whatever it was. I felt like I'm not the same. And I wasn't deliberately trying to be that way. In fact, I was trying not to be that way. And there are some people you see out there, they absolutely look like they're trying to be different, all this stuff they're doing. And that's not me. In fact, no, I can enjoy yourself, but that's not me. I'm just me. That's all. So that's part of the journey. And, some of us are that way, some of us are not. And then that whole thing about coming out of high school, and that's very typical. That's the old American dream thing. I'm going to meet the woman of my dreams. We're going to have children and a house and a car. I'm going to have a good job, all of that. And of course, along the way, we saw that that didn't happen for a lot of people. In fact, in some ways, it's impossible these days. But, and then in some cases, you're right, Julie's people did do that map and they got all those things, but they're not necessarily happy either. So, you know, who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, we do come in with a certain framework of possibilities. If you come in completely different from someone else, you are going to have a different life than most people, or you're going to see it differently. And having taught literature and writing most of my life, I tend to see the life path as full of themes, motifs, foreshadowing, all of those literary terms, different character types who wander through. And even like, I keep getting this certain type of person in my life.
Mm,
What's that about? Am I attracting them or are they attracted to me?
yeah.
What permissions do I give them that allow them to bring chaos into my life? Is very interesting, weird stuff. Cecilia, your hand is up, but you're muted.
Hi.
Hi, Cecilia.
No, I love this. This is great. And I'm very much along the lines of, you know, follow your bliss, follow your joy, because I that's all I've done my entire life. I didn't plan. I did go to college for a little bit just because I wanted to take dance classes. And but everything has been um I'm following my joy, and then somebody says, "Oh, there's an audition over here," or "Oh, this place is opening up. Maybe you'd like to go there." Oh, And when I came to Reconnective Healing, it's like going, "You need to work in the office." It's like, "Yes, I do." So things like that just show up. I remember when I was doing acting. I mean, it was because some friends were talking about they're having such a good time in this class. I said, "Can I go and watch?" And then all of a sudden, I move into LA to do some acting. And then, I didn't know this is what I really wanted to do. But when I was doing it, I was having the most fun ever. It was so much fun. And then somebody says, "Oh, I'm going to audition for this theater group. I need a partner, a scene partner. Can you go with me?" It's like, "Sure." And all of a sudden, I'm part of a theater group. And so things like that just kept opening up. And it just kept happening. When I tried to force it, when I was like, "Oh, I'm going to be sneaky, not sneaky about it, but I'm going to be wise." I thought, I'm going to join a courier group, so I can get on the lots. I'm delivering things and meeting people. That's when I tried to force it, that's when my body just said, no, no. Oh, and then I started getting aches and pains. It's like, that's not the right way to go. You got to follow your joy and stay in your joy and don't try to force it. And when that opens up for you, it does. because when it was time for me to let that go, it was just this crazy transition into the healing world. And I was all of a sudden, very focused on meditation and healing and this and that. And all of a sudden, that's the world that opened up for me. I didn't know I was going on that path, but I needed to go through the acting so I could find my voice, so I could learn how to speak to people, so I could do what I'm doing now. So it was really interesting that everything kind of unfolds, and I keep being introduced to people who want to do something, and would I help them? And when I help them, I get to do it too. And so it's really fun. I love it. It's just follow your bliss, and people will show up and doors will open, and just go, enjoy, and have a good time until you
Absolutely.
don't. And then there's another door opening.
That's so cool. And before we go to Yolanda, I'm going to read what Renee wrote in the chat. Dr. Seuss said, "Why fit in when you were born to stand out?" And that advice can give us all a little tweak to our life path. Yolanda.
Oh, hello, everybody. Well, my life has been pretty wild. I've lived, did all kinds of things, moved. Every 3 years, I'd move to another town. And I was actually just so into mystics, the mysticism, the spiritual, anything that came from the Persian or Eastern or Christian or whatever. And I feel like I really have been literally guided to do certain things. Like, okay, it's time to move from here. Okay, and then this all in the door opens for where I'm going. And then I was in a hot tub I was living in Denver, well, no, Boulder, and I was in a hot tub with my friend near Aspen. And then I just had this vision, or guidance comes to me, and I don't ask for it sometimes. It just comes. And I heard the drums, Indian drums, and they said, "Now here's where you're to move to next." And so I moved up to Newcastle and worked in that area for quite a while. So I moved every 3 years somewhat, and I've experienced so many different things and been with so many different groups and people. And I've kind of asked my higher self, why am I having to do all this stuff? And the answer was so that you can understand people and things, and there will be no judgment. And that, so I would know all the ins and outs of life, different people's experience, and not to judge. So that's what that was about. So I moved to Montrose, Colorado to be with my daughter. Feel that adventure energy coming in again, like, oh, I want to do this. I went to India every year for 10 years and just lived life. It's been pretty great, magical. I was living in southern Utah, and I knew I had to get out of there. I had to move somewhere, so I didn't really know where. So I was talking to a friend in Sedona. She goes, "Well, why don't you come down here and check it out?" I said, "Okay, I'll give it some thought." Well, that night I had a dream that I was riding on the back of an eagle right by his head. And I was right. He was taking me down this canyon with all these trees. And it was just, I can still visually feel it and see it. It was just incredible. And so I said, okay, I'll come down. So I packed up my stuff and got a little camper. I started to go down from Flagstaff to through Oak Creek Canyon down into Sedona, and that's it. That's where the eagle was taking me, and I could see. So that was a confirmation, and so these things like that happen to me a lot in my life. But now I'm in a still point where I have to stay grounded and still, and go really deep within myself and changing and allowing things to come out. So I'm curious on what is emerging.
Well, that inner path is certainly a new adventure. I like that we were getting more into the metaphysical, and I think a lot of us have these various paths because of what we chose before we were born. I think we hear that a lot from all kinds of people that we choose our families, we choose various disabilities or talents or whatever. But it's just like this life is like one frame of a big film. And if we're only going to look at this clip, we're only going to see this one life path. But who knows where we've been and where we're going in our next big adventure, which is what Barbara's dealing with by being an end-of-life doula, which occurs to me is sort of like being a midwife in a way. You're midwifing them from one life into another. But then my students used to call me Mrs. Metaphor. So it's always a metaphor. What's a metaphor, Mrs. Metaphor?
Well, I'll jump in, Mary, and finish up what you're saying, because yeah, I think that it's so exciting to help people address that whole next step. And it's it's not like, oh, I've been around so many people who have died, although I actually have been, and very many renditions of that. And many of my old high school friends are no longer physical, and I've connected with them. And but I think that there are so many people who are fearful of that, and helping them to think about that next step is exciting to me. And this morning I was talking to a friend of mine who lives back east, and she's like, "Oh, you've got so much energy. I just can't imagine, it's just amazing how you keep going, going, going and doing all this stuff." And it's like, there's just so much that I want to share. And there's so much that, I feel like, to me, it's like everyday stuff. And yet I realize a lot of people don't really have the understanding or knowing of it. And yeah, I want to get it out there. So it's exciting. I just find that exciting. And
It's
and
funny.
that's what makes life fun for me, I guess.
One of the things about a life path is sometimes it's not you moving forward, but what's coming at you.
Mm.
And often, like, people talk about what they fear. They fear death. And at this point in my life, it's more scary for me to think about driving downtown and finding parking than it is to, meet my maker or makers or whoever. So it's like, yeah, death, I can handle that. I just can't stand parallel parking. It's crazy.
Is that the devil you know versus the devil you don't know?
Yes, I've died before. I'm not sure I've ever completed a parallel parking task correctly.
How about parallel parking with a stick shift? That's what
Oh,
I
no.
always, that's my game.
No,
Oh,
I
on
never-
a hill. Yeah.
I
With
never
a stick
learned.
shift on a hill.
In fact, I didn't learn to drive till I was 27. So,
Mm.
yeah. Yeah, there are things
Well,
that scare me and things that don't. Wow. Well, on that crazy little note, thank you all for taking part in our discussion today. This was Talks on Tuesday. Join us again. And if you do see us on YouTube, be sure to like and share, because that changes the algorithm. I'm not even sure what that means, but I hear it all the time. And we would like to have more people join us and be thinking about these things, because otherwise you got to think about what passes for reality. Oh, well. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye. See you next week.